Hi, I'm Lillian. Welcome back to my channel Ink and Pages and to my spring reading wrap up. So I have 12 books to talk about in this video, and to be honest, a lot of them are ones I've already talked about in reading vlogs, so I will link all of those in the description to this video. But to be honest, whenever I'm watching a wrap up and someone says, oh, you can hear lots more of my thoughts on these books in my reading vlogs, I'm literally never tempted to go and watch those reading vlogs. So if that's you, don't worry, I'm also going to give a quick lowdown on what those books are about and what I thought of them in this video. So first of all, I have two of the books I read in my Buzzwordathon vlog. Firstly is Red Thread by Charlotte Higgins. This is a non-fiction book all about the theme of mazes and labyrinths, and it also looks at the original Greek myth of Theseus in the labyrinth at Crete, and also explores how motifs from that original myth have been reused throughout cultures and different literature and art. And basically this book was quite interesting, but never past the point of being really interesting, and some bits I did find just quite dull. But having said that, this topic is just one that's really interesting to me anyway, so even though I might have found this book just a tiny bit disappointing, just in a technical sense, I am still going to keep it. I'm probably going to revisit it, and it's now taken up its place on my mythology and folklore shelf, and I gave it 3 stars. Next is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Max Gladstone and Amal Al-Motar. This is a science fiction novella about 2 agents on opposite sides of this epic, sprawling war throughout history and throughout different time streams. And the 2 main characters in this start up a unlikely correspondence with each other. And I actually read this in not only the Buzzwordathon vlog I did, but also the Tis the Jam readathon. And in both of those videos I said I really liked it, I gave it 4 stars. It just has like really beautiful poetic writing, although my favourite bit was actually the descriptions of how the 2 main characters, Red and Blue, pass letters to each other in these increasingly weird sci-fi ways, which I just really loved reading about. So this is an epistolary novel, and traditionally I do not get on with books like that at all, so I think it just shows how strong this book was that I really didn't mind that element. And I would really recommend this for anyone, even if you don't normally read science fiction books, if you're looking for something quite short and weird, maybe just to try out and see if you like it, yeah, I would highly recommend this. The next 3 books I read were also for the Tis the Jam readathon. The first one was Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This is a thriller book about a woman called Maggie who, when she was a young child, her and her parents lived in this house which would later become infamous for being like one of the most haunted houses in America. And that all happened because her dad actually wrote a book about their brief time living in the house and all of the supposedly paranormal and ghostly activity they encountered. And then after her dad's death, Maggie actually inherits the house from him. So she goes back to try and like fix it up and maybe sell it, but also to kind of investigate what actually happened, because she does not believe that it was actually haunted, and so she wants to find out the truth of why they left so quickly and why her parents don't like to talk about it. And I really enjoyed this book. It kind of helped me discover that I think I just really like books about supposedly haunted houses. And I liked how this switched between like Maggie's story in the present, going back to the house as an adult, and also it was interspersed with clips from her dad's book, sort of telling his version of events of what happened when she was little. And the whole thing was just so deliciously creepy and suspenseful and interesting, and I just really raced through it. I really loved all the twists and turns, and I enjoyed the ending as well, which for me is often where thrillers can kind of fall down a little bit, but this one was really solid from start to finish. So I gave this book 4 stars, and it was just very good. Unlike the next 3 books I read, which were a trio of 2-star disappointing reads. The first one was American Royals by Catherine McGee. This is set in a world where instead of the US having like a presidency, they have a monarchy, which is descended from George Washington, who was their first king. And this story is about 4 main characters. You have the current crown princess, her younger sister, the younger sister's best friend, and then the American prince's ex-girlfriend. And when I went into this book, I wanted something like fun and a bit silly maybe, but it just ended up like vapid and shallow and just dumb and bad. To be honest, I was hoping for something I'd enjoy as much as Red, White and Royal Blue, which was maybe a stupid hope to have going into this book, because not only was it just definitely not as good, it was barely bearable on every level. It's the kind of story where pretty much all of the conflict in the book exists because none of the characters will talk to each other honestly, and because all of them are annoying and immature. This book just had so much potential and, in my opinion, wasted all of it. The next book that really disappointed me was Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, which I've actually since unhauled. This book is about a little coffee shop in Tokyo where if you go and you sit in a specific seat and obey by all these other little rules as well, you can travel back in time within the coffee shop. And sure, that sounds really charming, but I just didn't get on with the writing in this book. And also the first of the 4 characters in the book who do travel in time in this way, I found incredibly annoying. So the first quarter of the book was just a slog to get through. And at that point, it was going to take a miracle for me to end up liking the book overall. And that just didn't happen. Having said that, I can see the appeal. It is a very whimsical and interesting book, and at times it got very emotional, which I could appreciate even while I wasn't really liking it. So if that sounds interesting to you, like, go for it. It just was not my cup of tea. And the final book I gave 2 stars was, hear me out, this is a very popular book that everyone seems to love, but bear with me, I'm going to give my reasoning for this, was Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. So I rate books out of 5 stars on a purely personal, subjective scale. It is based on how much I enjoy them, not how good the book was. I mean, obviously there is a correlation there. If a book is really good, it's more likely that I'll enjoy it, and if a book is really terrible, it's less likely I'll enjoy it, but that doesn't always match up. So this is just a rare example of me being able to look at a book and say, yes, objectively, this is a good book, however, I just did not enjoy it. This is an adult romance book about the titular Chloe Brown, and then this guy called Red, who is kind of like her block of flats handyman / superintendent, which honestly I thought was just a very American concept. I've not heard of a block of flats having that in the UK, but actually this is a British book. Like, Talia Hibbert is British, which surprised me because I always thought she was American. But this book, like, at least the version I read, did have quite a lot of American terms in, like apartment and cookies and stuff like that. So Chloe has kind of like a nearish brush with death at the beginning of this book, and she takes it as a sign that it's time for her to get a life. And this involves like moving out of her family's mansion for the first time and strike out on her own, which she's found very intimidating previously because she has fibromyalgia and chronic pain. And in her new block of flats, she meets Red, and then the romance ensues. And that's a fine premise. The thing was, I just couldn't connect with the characters, not at all. And in a book like this, where literally the whole point is the 2 main characters and the relationship between them, you have to have some kind of connection there. And I just didn't. I was reading it like, when am I going to start feeling invested in these characters' lives? And the answer was never. I finished the book not really caring about them at all. And if I never cared about them, it was just never going to work for me, was it? Also, a quick side note to say that while I am no stranger to reading romance, this book was maybe, shall we say, a bit too anatomical for my personal literary preferences. So I'm on the fence about reading the other 2 books in this series because there's 2 other books following each of Chloe's younger sisters. Because while this one disappointed me, the general consensus from reviews I've seen are that the books get better and better as they go. So I haven't ruled them out, it's just maybe not right now. And I forgot to say, I actually read that one for the Disability Readathon, which happened in April. I was planning on doing like a whole other reading vlog for that month, but things got slightly crazy in April and May because I moved out into my own flat, much like Chloe Brown herself. But that meant that everything was like very busy and overwhelming, so I actually only ended up reading 2 books. The second one was 6 of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, which I fucking loved. This book is incredible, and I cannot emphasize enough how nice it is to read a book that everyone tells you you're going to love, and then love it as much as you were hoping to. God, I just loved it. I loved it. So this book is set in the same world as the author's Grisha trilogy. The first one is called Shadow and Bone. You may have heard of the recent Netflix adaptation. And I read the first 2 books in that trilogy like ages ago, but they were a bit like YA fantasy, and I do mean that in a derogative way. Sorry, I just really didn't enjoy them that much. But 6 of Crows, everyone said 6 of Crows is great. It's so much better than the Grisha books. And they were fucking right. Oh my God, I loved it. Everyone and their mum said that 6 of Crows was amazing, and I've never been so pleased to give in to peer pressure before. So this book is about 6 people who go on a heist. And I don't want to say any more than that because I actually went in not knowing very much about what this book was actually about, didn't know the names of all the main characters or anything like that, despite many years of potential exposure to spoilers. Since reading it, however, I have of course been spoiled on quite a big event that happens in the sequel, but we're pretending I don't know that. I'm going to pretend that never happened. And yeah, it was just great. No notes. Next, I took part in the Asian Readathon in May, and the first book I read for that was A Thousand Beginnings and Endings, which is an anthology of short stories that are edited by Ellen O and Elsie Chapman. And for me, there was just a very stark contrast between the stories which were more like retellings of the myths, set in a slightly fantasy time with magic and mystery, and then the ones that were like reinvented in the modern era or that were set in our world and had only a very few elements of the original myth in them, because those ones I just really did not enjoy as much, and it kind of proved that I like fantasy stories more than I like contemporary stories. With the exception of the story in here, The Land of Morning Calm by E.C. Myers. That was the only one like set in our modern world that I just actually enjoyed. My other favourite stories from here I think were Forbidden Fruit by Roshni Chokshi, and then probably Olivia's Tale by Alyssa Wong. Unfortunately, this collection did have slightly more misses than hits for me, but overall I did still enjoy it, so I'm giving it 3 stars. Okay, from this point on in spring, all I did was reread books. At this point in May, I had just moved into my flat, and while I'm very pleased to be here, I did find it very overwhelming at first. So I decided to reread an old childhood favourite, which was Dragon Rider by Cornelia Funke. This is a kid's book about a dragon who goes in search of this place called the Rim of Heaven in the hope that it will be a new home for him and the other dragons, away from any prying human eyes. And it's just charming. It was a really fun book to reread. I enjoyed it just as much as I did when I was a kid. Even though now I can tell that if I was to read any more kids' books, like aimed at this age range, I probably wouldn't enjoy them that much. I would find them a bit too young for me. But this book has that like sentimental factor for me. So even while I was reading it and I was thinking, oh, if this was the first time I was reading this book, I wouldn't enjoy it. I did enjoy it because it was not the first time I was reading this book. I've read this countless times throughout my life, and this one was just like an extra bonus. So it was just a really nice experience. I gave it 4 stars, and it did what I was hoping it would, which was make me feel like safe and settled in this new flat. And I would really recommend this to people who do still read middle grade books and have never heard of this before. I think you should definitely pick it up. And then finally, I reread the first 3 volumes of the Monstrous graphic novel series, which is by Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda. This is set in a like high fantasy, matriarchal, slightly steampunk Asian inspired world, and it is just as cool as that sounds. These books have beautiful artwork and this like epic, sprawling, complex world building and plot, which I just love. The first volume, I think this is actually like my 3rd or 4th time rereading it. I ended up bumping up to 5 stars this time because I just found myself like relishing every second, because I know the first volume so well and I love how it sets everything up so beautifully in a way that I could really appreciate now that I've read further into the series and then was coming back to revisit the first volume. I mean, the first time I read it, I thought it was like a solid, enjoyable book, and I think I gave it 3 stars. And now it has literally become my favourite graphic novel series I've ever read. And I just love how the story then builds and unfurls throughout the next couple of volumes, and I was literally taking notes again as I was reading it because I didn't want to forget any of the little details or references that appear in earlier volumes, because you just know that they're all going to tie into something bigger. Like not one single word or single panel is wasted. Everything is relevant, even if it takes time for you to realize in what way. It is just so tightly and meticulously plotted in this like masterful way of storytelling that I just adore. It just absorbs you right in, and I love every twist, every little reveal that happens. It is just amazing. So those are all the books I read in spring. Quite a large variety, no 1 stars, luckily, but I mean it's several more down the disappointing end of things, but then also potentially what could turn out to be my favourite book of 2021. So I hope your reading is going great. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. fucking legs gone numb. Ow.